Well guys, incredible news. I just got back to my house from the shop and the car is running amazing. It's not hesitating, it's not misfiring, and it's not overheating. I gotta say, it's a great feeling to work on a car and get the results you were hoping for. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel, Pete's Carport. Today we're gonna dive right into Barney, my original W140 that I had sold off. It is a 95 S500, and we're gonna tackle some of the regular maintenance, some of the items that you guys ask me about all the time, and what you would wanna do. Let's say you just picked up a car and you don't know the history, or it's just been a while since you've done anything on this car. We're gonna start with your standard stuff like oil change. We're gonna be doing a coolant flush. We're gonna do the fuel filter, windshield wipers, because those are destroyed on this car. And then we're gonna go through a lot of the other stuff because we are getting a misfire. The front brakes I wanna do because I'm getting some shuddering. So we've got a lot on the plate. This is definitely gonna be a multiple series things, but we're gonna start today with the standard oil, coolant, and move on from there, see what we can get done on this video. So let's go ahead and step over here and talk about some of the products we're gonna be using and what we're gonna be doing. I would also love to hear from you guys in the comments what you use to do these type of things to your cars and what type of maintenance you recommend for me or anyone else trying to do this to their vehicle. But let's talk about where I'm at. As you can see, Barney is running, and that is because I went ahead and added a radiator flush. It's definitely something I highly recommend. You don't have to go with this brand, but I do like the Blue Devil brand. So I'm gonna be flushing out what's in there now and then running some distilled water through there. Chris Fix has an awesome video on this because I'm not gonna go into detail, but I will link that. So we are running this in there now, and we're gonna drain that out. We're gonna go ahead and run some distilled water, drain that out. Then we're gonna be going with this Peak coolant. I really like the Peak brand because they do let you know exactly what vehicles this is specified for. And you can see here, Mercedes-Benz pre-2014, so great for any W140. Just make sure you get the one specified for your car. Now, the most controversial thing, and I've done videos on this before, I have used quite a few different brands and quite a few different weights of oil, but I really wanted to try this Mobil 1 1040, high mileage. A lot of people in the forums say it works out really well in the hot weather areas. We're gonna be going into summer soon, and it gets hot out here in Florida. So I wanted to go with a heavier weight on the front here. 40 is pretty much the standard for any of these cars that I've seen online. 0W40, 5W40, 10W40, and I've even used 15W40 and talked about that in a past video. But let me know in the comments what you guys use and why you use it. We're gonna be putting, I think it's close to 9 quarts, so I did buy 10 quarts, and I did that because we got a free filter with that. I'm gonna be going with just a CarQuest filter because it came free with the oil purchase. A lot of people use the Mall or the Mans. I've used those before too. I swap them out so often that any of the brands that I've used have all worked for me. I've had no issues with them. With all that said, let's get started. Let's get this coolant flushed out, and let's move on to some other things because I want to get to the fuel filter. We need to see what fuel filter we have, and I'll talk about that when we get to that. And then we can do some of the other regular maintenance. Oh, before I move on, as I was letting this car run, I noticed that my tensioner is just wobbling around down there. So I've got to figure out on that too, if that needs to be swapped out or tightened up. So I'm gonna have to look at that. Also, it looks like the motor mounts are shot now on this car, so probably have to do those as well. Let's get started and let's see what else we can figure out on this car. So while we're waiting for the car to cool down so we can safely change out our coolant as well as change out our oil, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the fuel filter. Now, I've covered this in a few videos just recently about how there's 2 types of fuel filters and it makes no sense. There's no consistency to it. So I wanna make sure that I get the right fuel filter for this car because I ended up ordering in one a while back and it was not the correct one for Dr. Dre over there, which is also a 95. The Dr. Dre had the threaded type end fuel filter. Now, I've already gone down here, so I know exactly what fuel filter I'm looking at, and it happens to be the Post style fuel filter. So to access your fuel filter and fuel pump, there's a plastic cover. I've mentioned this before, I've done videos on it, and there are 3 10mm nuts, 2 here, and then 1 up here. That's the piece of plastic that comes off. Underneath there, you're gonna see your fuel filter right there, and that's a Bosch, and we have a fuel pump right there. Now, on this fuel filter, you're gonna see it's got standard rubber lines going to it that just have your standard clamps here, your fuel hose line clamps. This is the Post style fuel filter, so I need to go down and get the Post style. Now, if you guys saw the past videos, we changed out ones with the threaded. Now, ironically, Xavier's 97 had the Post style, and Dr. Dre, my 95, had the threaded style. So there's banjo bolts on some of these style filters, so just make sure you get the right one. I'm gonna go down now. I think they actually have this post style in stock at Advanced Auto, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that so we can get this changed out as well, because it is probably one of the most neglected things. I have not changed it out on this car, and anytime I mention it to somebody, they change out their fuel filter and the car runs so much better. It's like night and day. So I'm excited to see how well this car is going to run just by changing out that fuel filter. And like we mentioned, there is a slight misfire at idle, and we're going to start with this, and then we're going to move on to our spark. So that'll be on a later video, but let's go ahead and get this swapped out and see if it does help anything out. All right, guys, now that the car has cooled down, we're gonna go ahead and drain our coolant out. We're just gonna drain it from the radiator. We're not gonna do an entire engine flush, but it should be able to get most of what we need to get out of there. I did buy 4 of these jugs because if you go to the store or if you look online, it does say right around 16 quarts, which would be right around 4 of those jugs to do a full flush. I'm not sure exactly how much we're gonna get, but we should get a lot of this coolant out. Went ahead and set up a tub to catch all that coolant in, and I'll show you guys exactly how the coolant comes out of this radiator here. So if you slide up underneath your car, there's a little red tab, and on the front side here there's a slot where you can get a Phillips head screwdriver in, and just go ahead and turn that counterclockwise and it will start draining out, and just let it drain out. I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. I'm gonna go ahead and remove our cap off of our reservoir. That'll allow air to get in there and let this flow a little bit better. That does look like straight water though. When I was looking down the reservoir, I swore it was straight water, but it does have a coolant smell to it. I'm just wondering if that's what we added to there to flush this out. Anyways, we need to get all this out of there. It does look very clean though, so not too concerned with having extremely dirty coolant in there. Just want to get some fresh stuff in there and get this out of there. It is coming out very clean, which is great news. All right, guys, it's time for a fill-in. I went ahead and added about 2 3/4 gallons of distilled water, let the car run, turn the heater on, and I'm not getting any heat. Now, I am making a completely separate video where I swapped out the heater control valve, and you can see the one that was on Barney is on the ground there, and I put the one in from my parts car, hoping that it would work, and for some reason, I'm still not getting any heat. So that's an issue I have to figure out, and you guys will see that video as well. But I'm thinking the heater control valve might be good, and there's some sort of other issue. Now, this one was definitely fully caked up. We are in Florida. This heat never got used the entire time that I had it, and probably prior to that, since the car has been in Florida for a very long time. So I figured this one's bad. Now, there is a chance the one from the parts car is caked up as well, but I really feel like it might be something else. So I got to investigate that. But in the meantime, I'm letting that distilled water drain out. I'm going to go ahead and add our coolant back in. I'll be draining out the oil, and then I'll be moving on to the fuel filter. After that, I'll kind of fill you in what else we're going to do and how the car is running, how the car is doing on all these different things that we've done. So stay tight, guys. All right, guys, while I'm waiting for the oil to finish draining off, because I'm doing an oil change, I want to talk about how I was able to bleed out the cooling system. And let me tell you, it made a world of difference on the operating temperature. So I did not mention this earlier, but the car was getting up there in temps just driving around normally. It used to hang out around 80, and it was getting upwards of a little bit over 100. So I was kind of fearing that this car had an issue somewhere in the cooling system. So I wanted to start with draining out the coolant, adding in new coolant, and that didn't quite make a difference just driving around. So I got to bleeding the system. I went online, figured out exactly how to bleed this, and there were a couple people who specifically mentioned leaving the cap off, getting the car up to temperature. Now you got to be careful that you don't go too high, because this thing could shoot out the coolant if it boils over. So make sure you're very cautious doing this. I got it right up to about 80 degrees, and I could feel that this hose was getting hot, because that's when your thermostat starts to open. And I would squeeze this hose with the cap off, and that would burp off any of the air bubbles. I could even see the air bubbles burping off as I was doing it in the reservoir here. Then I went ahead and put my cap back on, drove the car around, and it's hanging out again at 80. So I'm very, very happy about that. That's a big success. I wasn't sure what else could have been wrong, but luckily for me, it probably had air in the system because I had to add coolant a while back, and I'm guessing air got in there at some point. So just a heads up, if you need to bleed this system out, which you will need to do if you change out your coolant, you want to go ahead and leave that cap off, get your car up to temp, be careful with everything, and squeeze off your upper hose here once your thermostat opens up, and that should push any of the air bubbles out of the system. Recap it and you should be good to go. Gonna go ahead and finish changing this oil off. I'm not gonna show that because this car had an oil change not too long ago, but it's been, like I said, over a year since it's been changed. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys the fuel filter. Now, I went ahead and ordered a Bosch fuel filter. I actually ordered one for Dr. Dre, which uses a different fitting, and one for Barney over here. So this is the one for Barney, like I was talking about. It has the standard post fitting, and the one for Dr. Dre over there has the screw-on fitting. So it has a banjo bolt on the end of the gas lines. I don't know why they did that. I say this all the time, but you can order either one. When you look up a 95 or pretty much any of the years, either one of these will show up in the listings, and you just got to make sure you order the right one in. So we're going to get down there in just a second here, take a look at how bad the fuel filter was, swap it out, and hopefully changing out that fuel filter will eliminate or at least reduce the misfire we're getting. We're getting that shudder when we're at idle. But I also believe that we do have some vacuum leaks because I am getting a check engine light and I saw some vacuum lines that are loose. So I know we need to at least fix that. But let's see what this fuel filter change out does, and then we'll go on to a new video after that because I wanted to just get these things out of the way. Already got new brakes in. That'll be the next video, and we'll just keep moving on doing all the regular maintenance on this car to get Barney back on the road running really good. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get that fuel filter out. Well, I know I've shown this on other videos, but in case somebody's trying to get this oil changed out and comes across this video, your oil filter housing is right down there, 13mm bolt on top, and you're gonna pull out this long bolt here. You do have a crush washer that'll go onto this bolt. You need to swap out, should come with your filter. And the cool thing about this car is it does have a canister filter, which allows you to look at if there's any bad sediment in your engine, and this looks very clean. Oil still looks pretty good too. So we're just gonna move on. Figured I would show you guys that in case you had questions about it. Okay guys, I went ahead and clamped off the hose. Hopefully it doesn't drain out too much and get all over me. There is a direction on these filters, so make sure the arrow is facing towards the front of the car for the direction of the fuel flow. We'll go ahead and take our clamps off. And this is a good time to inspect everything down here because these hoses can rot out and can leak. So make sure you don't have any leaks, you don't smell any fuel, and your hose lines look good. These ones aren't the best, but they're good enough for right now. Fuel actually looks pretty clean coming out the back side of this, but we're more concerned about what would come out of this end. Now, if it was real dirty out of this end, that would mean that the filter is usually pretty clogged up. And we saw that with Dr. Dre and Xavier's last car when we did the fuel filter swap outs on those. But this is looking pretty clean, which is good. So since I've done a bunch of these recently, I can already tell this fuel is pretty clean. We're gonna dump it out opposite the arrow. That'll be the fuel that would be going into the fuel filter. If that's really dirty, which is very, very clean, that'll indicate that this could be a clogged filter, and your tank might have a ton of debris in there, rust in there, and we do not see that. So we know we're good on the tank. The fuel looks nice and clean. The other thing that could be causing our misfire or shudder, obviously, like I said, is vacuum leaks. We also need to check our cap and rotor. This is a 95, so it does have a cap and rotor. So we're gonna be pulling those off in an upcoming episode, cleaning those out. So we'll check out the spark. Now, I know I changed my spark plugs and I believe most of the wires out not too long ago, so those are probably good, but I've never changed out the cap and rotor. So the amount of time that this car sits and just being in the humid weather of Florida, that is definitely something you want to take a look at. And then obviously vacuum leaks, which I know we already have. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into that in an upcoming video. Also the brakes, but let's go ahead and fire this thing up and see if it runs any better. I'm going to be driving this week, so I'm pretty excited about this car running a little bit better, not overheating, all these things that we need to do, especially if you just picked up a car like this, you don't know the history, and there's many other things that need to be done. Go ahead and comment down below. Let me know what you guys would do if you picked up a car, or if you had a car that had been sitting that needs the regular maintenance or just needs some upkeeping. Let me know in the comments what you guys do when you pick up an old car like a Mercedes S500 and what you recommend I do on some upcoming videos. You guys have an awesome day, a blessed week, and I'll catch you on the next video. Man, I can't believe this thing takes 8.5 quarts of oil. I always forget when I go to change it.